r/ask Reddit. What's the most inappropriate thing you've witnessed at a funeral? My own kids, boys ages 10 and 8, at their great grandfather's wake. They got a chair and moved it to the casket and started making his mouth into smiley face, laughing the whole time. When me and their grandfather, my father-in-law, saw it, I immediately pulled them away and told them they shouldn't do that. Grandpa laughed and said it's fine. He would have really loved that they did that. We later found out that the great-grandfather had asked the funeral home ahead of time to put a sign in his hand that said thanks for coming, but they refused. I want a get well soon balloon in mine. The funeral home putting a random guy in my grandfather's casket, suit, glasses, and wedding band, while then admitting that they had misplaced my grandfather was fairly inappropriate for a funeral. Why did they feel that a loner corpse was an acceptable solution? That approach is probably what started this mess in the first place. At my grandpa's funeral in 2006, a random drunk woman that no one in our family knew stumbled in and started singing show tunes, then crying till she was escorted out. I'm not going to laugh. I'm not going to laugh. At my cousin's funeral, one of my relatives literally tried jumping in the casket with him. Really traumatizing experience, I might add. They're just the funeral booster. Paid him $1,000 for that. At my grandma's funeral, there was a woman that had a really bad relationship with my grandma, but one of my aunts invited her to the funeral. She started receiving people as if she was a family member and tried to put herself at the center of everything. We had someone sorta like that too. One of my cousin's girlfriends that everyone really disliked. I honestly don't think my cousin even likes her that much, but that's a different issue altogether. Uncle died and she acted like her own father died to all my cousins' faces who were incredibly close with their father and in completed devastation mode. Grandma died and she did the same and tried inserting herself as the caretaker of everyone. Like, listen beach, read the room. Let me and my mother comfort each other. We do not want your comfort right now. Go bother someone else. At a family friend's funeral, a man I allegedly met when I was 3 came up behind me, pulled my head back by placing his hand on my neck, and told me that I might not remember him now but I will someday. That creepy old dongfoot. At an open casket wake, a friend of the deceased attempted to give her a drink of single malt whiskey. She ended up being forcibly removed as she wouldn't stop and spilled a lot of the alcohol in the casket. It was as horrible and inappropriate as it was heartbreaking. For everyone. Someone should have told her the morticians usually wire the deceased's jaws shut to keep the mouth from opening. Not a funeral, but my grandmother was on her deathbed. She was going in and out of consciousness. My a-hole father and his a-hole sister start arguing over who will get a wedding ring. Not for sentimental value but because they wanted to sell it. Anyway, to make a long story short, they took the ring off and their mother came out of consciousness and the first thing she said was, "Where is my ring?" Ducking scumbags. The mother of the deceased putting on a terribly acted and meth-fueled show about how much she loved and missed her daughter. Shortly thereafter she was convicted of the daughter's murder. Oh shit. We had a snowball fight outside the parlor of my Pop-Pop's funeral. Pop-Pop would have approved. The non-family mourners seemed horrified. I cannot stand the whole "you have to be sad at funerals" thing. I hope something silly like this happens at my funeral. My brother-in-law's girlfriend locked herself in a car, cried and screamed threatening to kill herself. At my father-in-law's funeral, she was fine 5 minutes later and explained to my in-law she did it because she's not used to not having all the attention. She thought her being pregnant would make people forget that the father died. That's disgusting. And your brother-in-law is going to be forever attached to crazy because she got pregnant. My best friend died last year from a random heart failure at 25. The pastor at the funeral went on for about 10 minutes about how we had all killed him because we were sinners and that we should join his church to make amends. He didn't know any of us. It was very uncomfortable. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I had something similar happen. Not at a funeral but at the viewing. Mutual friend of mine and husband's had died in a head-on collision. Friend had been drinking but not driving. He had a DD. At the viewing, another friend's grandma was there. She sat up there the entire 2 or 3 hours telling every single one of us what terrible sinners we were and that we were to blame for his death because if we had been good, or even decent friends. He would be alive and would be a man of God. She was not invited to the funeral. The priest repeatedly referred to my grandmother by the wrong name. After the 4th or 5th time my aunt got up and quietly told him the correct name. My grandmother had attended church weekly for decades. There was no reason for the priest to not know his parishioner. Needless to say, we did not pay his fee. My ex came back from her grandfather's funeral. I had to work with family reunion pictures of herself, her siblings, and her parents posing next to the open casket. When I casually commented that I thought it was a little off, she explained that they did so because grandma otherwise wouldn't believe he died. My mom's family are big funeral picture takers. I think it has to do with the fact that they're very rarely all in one place together, so they take advantage of that and take pictures when they can. Doesn't mean it's not creepy. I guess it's not totally inappropriate given who had died, but a group of guys lit up a fat joint at a funeral I went to in HS. I guess it was his smoking buddies, but it didn't go over that well. I'll be upset if I die and my smoking buddies don't do this, to be honest. Bonus points if they leave the roach in the casket to start my afterlife off nicely. Was at the funeral of a priest once. He was so well liked in the church. Not only were there dozens of other priests, but something like 2 or 3 bishops. More than half of the people had to stand outside of the church and listen via loudspeaker. Kind of hard when the neighbor of the cemetery plays anti-church and anti-God songs loud enough to hear nothing else. I'm absolutely not religious and usually listen to exactly the same music as well. But holy cow, that was inappropriate. Especially because the guy got up at around 8 AM on a Sunday JST so he could duck with people. If I had been a family friend member, I would have made things a lot worse by walking to his house with sole purpose of punching his face off. At my great-grandmother's funeral, her son showed up to the funeral wearing khakis and his bright orange Tennessee Vols shirt. Then he started yelling at my mom when she asked him who the pallbearers were going to be, mainly throwing a fit about who was in the will. Mind you, we hadn't even left the funeral home yet and were literally needing to know who they would be at that very moment. Needless to say, we don't talk to that side of the family anymore. One of my best friends died in September. There were some questionable circumstances surrounding his death, in that we were all pretty sure it was drug-related heroin. Anyways, the guy that got him into the stuff, who shot him up the night he died, showed up to the funeral. Hi, I could have killed him. My mum and sister were smoking weed at my cousin's funeral. He was only 16 when he died, so there were lots of kids there as well. My mum also wanted to surprise everyone by sending clowns to said funeral, who were going to paint butterflies on their faces because my cousin died of epidermolysis bullosa, known as butterflies disease. Maybe isn't as over the top as most of these comments, but I'm one of the Marines that has to go present the flag to the next of kin when a service member dies. It's usually old Vietnam and Korea vets, but sometimes it's a Desert Storm or recent war vet and the mother is there receiving the flag instead of a son or daughter. Point is, I've probably been to 45 funerals in the past year. It's striking how often someone's phone goes off during the service. It seems nearly every other or every third service someone's ringtones start playing. There's been a few times where someone will get up from their seat and answer the phone to. At my great aunt's funeral in rural Missouri, open casket, small country church. The pastor says my great aunt's dying wish was for one more person to embrace the teachings of Jesus Christ and to stand up right now and receive baptism in front of GAWWWD and his congregation. Everybody's head swiveled in my direction except the corpses. Nope, I'll just stare up at the ceiling for a while, guys. Thanks. The lady who convinced my mother to ditch chemo and use essential oils handed put biz cards at her funeral. I know a little boy who said his first word during the moment of silence at a funeral. Great time to drop a toy and clearly say shit. In context, right? Ripples of laughter went through the hall. Like 200 people were at this funeral. Not a single person scowled or told me off. And one elder lady came up to me and said you can be assured she would have laughed the loudest. She probably still is. That was quite the chuckle we all got. Special thanks to my oilfield husband and my father for their chronic use of said word that led to this moment with my eldest loin fruit. When my dad's mom passed away, there were a lot of people there. He comes from a family of 11, 10 now as his sister passed away a while ago, so there were a lot of nieces, nephews and cousins. It was an open casket. I was around 12-13. But everyone was grabbing things from her / off her from the casket. All the aunts grabbing things for their kids who don't even know her / remember who she is, way too young. The only thing my dad has a keepsake of his mother is a little rose pin that she wore in the home she was in before she passed. It's unfortunate and makes me feel very sad for my dad. I've mentioned it before, but at the wake for my very young sister, my aunt started talking to me about how she was going to write children's books and gave me a pen with her contact information on it. I'm not sure what she wanted, but I write and edit and I was working on an English degree and we barely ever see her, so I took it as self-promotion, not offering ways to reach out. My mom threw the pen away. A narcissistic family member arrived late, after everyone else was at the graveside for the burial, and probably lurking behind a tomb to pick the perfect time after the priest had just started talking, wearing an enormous hat and sunglasses and low-cut gown like she was attending the Golden Globes red carpet or something, and loudly making an absolute scene of how devastated she was, darlings, and just generally making it all about her. I walk up to the casket to pay my respects at my grandma's funeral. My cousin walks up at the same time, and as we are both crying, she says it's just crazy to believe that 2 weeks ago grandma and I were smoking a joint in your kitchen together. What? I went to my uncle's funeral with my dad, sister and friends. My father was already hammered and my idiot friends dressed in t-shirts and shorts. To top it off, my cousin wore the skimpiest top to her own dad's funeral. My father, wasted, was hitting on his own sister-in-law. My cousin ended up inviting us to smoke medical marijuana in her car. It was a disaster. My grandmother died when I was about 10 and my older sister was 12. We were at the wake for nearly 6 hours and the makeup they had put on her was very bad. It was sad and disturbing. To lighten the mood, an uncle told my sister and I that you couldn't feel it if someone tried to lick your elbow. We went around licking elbows of grieving family members for the rest of the wake. Yes, you can feel if someone licks your elbow. We went out to dinner after my dad's funeral. I had snagged one of his hoodies from his closet, and I was wearing it. My brother noticed and kinda sarcastically said, "Hey, nice jacket." I said, "Thanks, I got it off a dead guy." Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.